All right, I've had some comments from students and I've seen some of the work, and I wanted to kind of walk you through a little bit the Learning for Life with Style project. Um, what I noticed a lot of students doing was putting this image in the background of the body, and that's initially the right idea, but what I ended up doing was actually setting my own div. And so you'll see I've got here, actually I'm going to just go ahead and make this full screen. I've got a couple of divs here. I've got one that is the container. As you can see, it says ID container. And then I've got one that is a heading. And so the reason I did that was with this ID, or with this header here, I'm sorry, heading, and don't confuse that with the tag heading. This is just the name of the ID I chose. I could have chosen any name for this. But what I do is if I make this a div, then I can control how the text flows around it. And so notice now that I've got another block here, another ID, that actually this one's like class. This is the announcement container, and so it holds both of the mission and the announcement, and then even inside that I've got another one called announcements. And I believe this one is called announcements as well. Yeah, so I've got both of these are called announcements. And so you think, well, why did I do that? Well, they're essentially the same. They have the same mission at the top. They have announcements at the top. They have body copy that's the same. It's got the same border and style. You know, I've turned off, as you can see, I've turned off most of my styles here. But these are basically the same. And the way that I set that code was I told it, look, just float left on this code. And actually, let me reattach just quickly here my my style sheet, which is the style sheet 1. So I've made some changes here, and I'm just playing around. So I change that to style 1. Okay, so here we go. So if I go to live view, you'll actually see all my styling as well. So these two are, like I say, visually they're the same. And all I did was I said, look, on the announcements, make it float left. And so what float left does is anything to the left of it, the text will draw around. So the div will float to the left side of the page, and then anything that flows after it will go to the right of it. And so in this case, announcements is to the right, is below it, but it automatically, when it floats left, it drops up here. So it's a way of making that go right here. So that's the way in the mobile page. If you saw how I did with the mobile code, it when this div here, the container div, shrank in size down to half its width, this automatically just dropped down below it. And that the reason for that is because it floats only the div only floats if there's enough room, and if there's not enough room, when this div gets smaller, it automatically pushes it down to where it belongs below it. So if I come in here and I come into the style sheet and I say, look, in the announcements div, here's my container, here's my announcements. Notice I'm saying display in line, and then I'm saying float left. So if I just get rid of float left and come over here, now it's going to go, this one is going to go 100%, and this one is going to go drop below it. So it flows left to right. I can also say in my announcements, set my width to say, well, if that's 800 pixels, let's set it to 360 pixels. And let's see what happens when we do that. So it's still, the announcements are still flowing all the way across, even though I set it to 350. I think that's because I set it to display in line. If I set this to block, now we're back, but it's still not flowing. So what would happen if I left this as a block? I can come in and say, all right, well, let's make the float, let's bring the float back. And it's back. So actually I locked in the width of that, and so that's another way to do it. Obviously I just made a change here to my code where instead of saying display in line, it's a displaying as a block, which is probably right. That's a better way of doing it. But the interesting thing was I didn't set a a width to that page or to that block, and it was working. So, anyways, obviously there's a lot of ways to play around with this, but really the key here especially for the announcements block or a text block that holds the announcement and the mission, is to make it float left, and it will automatically drop it down here. And again, as I say, as I shrink down this outside container, and I can do that. I'll show you it really quickly here. Set that to 500. Like I said, it drops it down below it. Now again, I've got some spacing issue here I need to address, but you get the idea. Hope this helps. I know it's really brief, but I'm really hoping that you'll get this because you know it's useful. All right, cheers.